Coogs house. Big win over St. Mary's over the weekend. Hoping it's enough to stay under them one seed overall right now. Man, it was an ugly one, though. That's an ugly way to go about it, don't you think?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast over at your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who can stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below. That way you can get the latest on the Cougs all year long. If you're subscribed, the show should pop up on your feed each day, so you can be sure to make Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. And yes, we're entering like our third week, I think it is, on YouTube. Thank you. It's nice to see you again. Make sure you subscribe and all those kinds of things on there. Again, we're giving away a Marcus Sasser t-shirt at 250 subscribers. We crossed the halfway point. We're halfway there. So once we get there, obviously we'll be excited to give one of those away from an artist who's got a bunch of U of H swag online. To be entered to win, we just got to get 250 subscribers, so make sure you hit subscribe. And then we're also going to give someone who's been commenting on videos, so make sure you comment down below. If you got nothing else to say, tell us if you think goldfish is an animal cracker. Now, all of that is to say that we're going to recap the game on Saturday. We're going to do all three segments talking about that game and the impact of that game versus the St. Mary's Gaels. We'll do some basic stat kind of stuff first. The first segment's going to be looking at big men and how the big men played a big role in that game. Second segment's going to be looking a little bit more at like the guard play and kind of like what might have gone wrong in the guard play. And then the third segment's kind of look at like more holistically how that game for the number one ranked Houston Cougars plays out on the season as a whole, because a bunch of stuff is happening across college basketball. And Kelvin Sampson can say they don't care as much about the number one seed, but obviously you and I do. So let's talk about that later. First, let's talk about a couple things off the top of this game before we get into the bigs, though, in that first segment. Bluntly, it's kind of was an ugly game. We'll get into more nuts and bolts on that in a second, but I think it's interesting that St. Mary's coach in the post-game media presser afterwards, Randy Bennett, I should say, St. Mary's coach Randy Bennett, said that no one wanted to play the University of Houston, that these games have been booked. The Battleground 2K22 at Dickies Arena got booked for 3/4 of the teams in like June, and St. Mary's got the call in like late August because they'd worked down a list of teams and no one wanted to play Houston. And he kept talking about how like good it is for his program to play a team like Houston, and how like they're not scared of playing their one teams. They played Gonzaga in the past and those kind of things, how it's a good bar to measure yourself against. And frankly, when they see Gonzaga this year, it could pay off for them. One of the things they saw a lot of were the big men for Houston. Big men dominated the game for Houston in a way that I certainly did not predict. I'm not going to like sit here and lie and tell you I got that one right. I didn't. Going through some basic stats, Jamal Roberts played 36 minutes. That's a lot of minutes for a big fella. He was 7-11 from the field, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. I'd probably give him my game MVP. Reggie Chaney, 23 minutes off the bench, 3-3 shooting, 8 points, 4 rebounds, and a big block down the stretch that probably iced the game. Jarace Walker, just 19 minutes, still coming back with a hamstring injury. He was 1 of 7 shooting. It was a big dunk, 3 rebounds and 2 blocks. And JVA Francis, just 2 minutes and a block. And so if we look at like how the big men impacted the game, what I think is interesting is like last week when I was previewing this with Zach from St. Mary's, or just my one-on-one with you on Friday, I got to be honest, I thought the win and the path to victory here was guard play, not because I didn't necessarily respect the defense of like the Logan kid, their guard at St. Mary's, but because I didn't think Houston had this kind of advantage down low. Houston was shorter pretty much at every position on the floor. And that played its way out of the team rebounding stats. We'll get to more of those later. But what I thought was interesting was when Houston took Jarace Walker out, I thought the time must be because he's on like a minute stay with his hamstring. Post-game press conference, Kelvin Sampson said that Jarace needs to get, quote, more mud in his blood, because he called that game a mudbath. And he kept referring to mud and dirty and those kinds of things. But at the time, I thought Jarace Walker was coming out early in the first half with the minutes restriction kind of thing. And once he put in that Reggie Chaney or JVA Francis at the 4 or 5 spot with J1 Roberts at the other big, he rotated the guards in and out. He mostly had Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shead, and Tremont Mark with those guys out there. He then went into like a traditional horn set. So like you think of like a hook 'em horns, but upside down. And you got a guy in each corner and then two bigs at like the top of the key setting ice type screens. And he'd have the point guard dribbling off and sort of do a handoff anyway. He'd get into high-low action out of it, right? And he basically, out of that horn set, was able to send whichever big man that the biggest of big men, St. Mary's Gaels, his name was Mitchell Saxon. Whoever he was not covering went to low block, and whoever Saxon was covering on the ice or on the horn set would stay at the high post. And so that A means that it pulls Saxon away from the rim, and B, put the other big men, and both of Houston's big men in Reggie Chaney and Jawan Roberts are about the same size down the low block. Now, because Jawan Roberts had a little bit more like wiggle to his game, that meant that he got the low block a lot more. And you could hear their coach yelling it. And it was a loud gym, 3,000, 4,000 people there at a neutral site game, back-to-back games, late night and Saturday night, same day as the Big 12 championship game, that kind of stuff. They all knew he's going dribble, getting back to putting his right shoulder into the defender, left hand hook. And it was a stretch down the second part of the second half. So like think second quarter of a game, where Houston just went on this like 9-0 run to close the half in the last like 5 minutes of game. So just drain the clock, basket, drain the clock, basket, over and over and over again, because they kept hitting out of this action some way to get Jawan Roberts on that low block where he could go to work with his left hand. St. Mary's never really switched that up. They never really put Matt Saxon on him with two bigs out there. And I wonder if that's their own detriment, because I don't know that Chaney, for all the things he does well, and Coach said after the game, in these dirty types of games, Reggie Chaney is going to play a lot more. Played 23 minutes on the bench, right? I wonder if they'd have had more success going to that and moving the ball out of Jawan Roberts' hands. He went the right one time, shot air ball. and like, he plays long. He's got long arms, but I wonder what would happen there. I want to talk a second about that need more mud in his blood comment on Jarace Walker. I've been preaching for about 2 weeks now to put an ultra big lineup where Jarace is more like the 3-man, and then you have Chaney and Roberts or JVA and Roberts or somebody like that out there. And I wonder if coaches saying Parker shut the bleep up, because that's not where I'm going with this. He clearly wants Walker to be another one of these more, he stretches the ball out some on offense, but gets down and dirty on defense kind of stuff. And I thought it was fascinating, like because Walker is so strong. I mean, obviously Houston was shorter most positions, but no one was sturdier built than Jarace Walker out there. I wonder if that was kind of where he's going with that, because I wonder if that means that that's where he wants to see that game evolve while he's in college, because he saw in high school that he could dominate the interior post at IMG Academy and whatnot, wherever he wanted to be. And I guess I assumed that in projecting his game forward, it's the outside stuff that makes him offensively a pro. It's truthfully the defensive stuff that makes him a top 10 pick, right? That's said and done. He guards 5 positions, but it's the offensive stuff that I thought his exterior perimeter game was going to be more important. And I guess it sounds like Sampson kind of wants to go to more of his inside stuff. And admittedly, his only 2 points on Saturday were a back cut to a dunk that I guess he gets the back cut because you have to cover him out at the 3-point line in a different way. But he back cuts for a dunk like a big. It looked like a drop off shit, like nice little flip off back to him. And so I think that'll be interesting to see. I also think that it was nice to see Jawan Roberts in that Reggie Chaney stuff. He played, I talk about like the run at the end of the first half where he puts back the basket, went to right shoulder, left hook. But he also rotated the ball and when he popped out in the second half on the same kind of looks. And he was able to work the ball around more. It looked more like traditional, like think like 1990s, 2000s, early the aughts, traditional power forward type stuff. And that's encouraging, because that's like another card that Houston can play that's going to kind of throw a wrench in how people are doing things. And bluntly, Houston is able to just kind of cook the St. Mary's Gaels. Like there was no way around it. Whenever they wanted to, they'd get that little drop down basket. It was certainly a great look at it. They just kind of cooked them down low. And speaking of cooking, these holidays are here. We are in December. Achieve great gift giving when you give the gift of perfectly aged, tender, and delicious Omaha steaks. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have put together a special curated gift package to help take the guesswork out of gifting and make you a holiday hero. Go to omahasteaks.com and use code locked on at checkout to get $30 off of your order. $30 off of steaks, guys. $30. Send an assortment of mouthwatering favorites guaranteed to impress, like the legendary Butcher's Cut filet mignon. There's an air-chilled boneless chicken, juicy burgers. I got the site pulled up right here. It's even easy to prepare, like comfort food meals that are all ready in a flash. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away. So shop early and beat the shipping rush. Go to omahasteaks.com. Use promo code locked on at checkout. Omaha Steaks is a great gift from the heart. You get to be remembered with every unforgettable bite. Order with complete confidence today, knowing that you're ordering the very best. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code locked on at checkout to get an extra $30 off your order. Minimum order required. So if the big men had such a big day, I think it's safe to say that if my prediction from last week had been ringing true, that this game should have been a blowout, right? Because I was saying last week that the speed and shooting of Houston's backcourt was going to be the difference, that the size, the intensity of Houston's big men and the size of St. Mary's big men were going to kind of wash each other out. And that the truth is that like having a pro guard like Sasser with that kind of explosion in speed and shooting, or again, I think Jamal Shead's going to get paid to play basketball when he graduates or when he leaves Houston as well. That because I say leaves because I guess he might leave early. I think that those kinds of things would play out in a different way. I mean, bluntly, we've seen Terrence Arsenault grow up a lot over the first month of the season, right? Like these things I think would translate into frankly, into great work for Houston. And I thought that, if the big men dominate, then of course this game would be a blowout. And it was not. Jamal Shead played 39 minutes. He had just 6 points on 2 of 12 shooting, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 big steals. Great defense, not so much offense. Marcus Sasser played 38 minutes, 4 of 12 shooting, 13 points, 0 of 4 from beyond the arc, including 2 open looks. And then a rebound and 4 assists. Led the team in assists with 4. Tremont Mark had 30 minutes, 3 of 10 shooting for just 7 points, 2 rebounds and assists, and 2 steals. And Terrence Arsenault played just 13 minutes, had a single basket on 2 shots and 4 rebounds. Desperately missed in this kind of game. Ramon Walker Jr. And I guess I'll sit on that for a second before going back to guys that did play. Much like Coach said, Reggie Chaney is the kind of big man that plays in an ugly game. Ramon Walker is the kind of guy that plays in an ugly game. I mean, we remember like the big dive on the floor moment against Wichita State last year that saved that game and kind of preserved a great season with the Coogs last year. But he is that kind of get after a guy that even if it's go get your 4 fouls against that Logan kid from St. Mary's, like, okay, I got you, coach. And he will go drive him crazy in a way that means that Marcus Ashburn saves energy some for offense or what have you, right? I also think that he's a tough rebounder and a great rebounding guard. Like, Ramon Walker will not play more than 20 minutes in I can't think of a game on the schedule. He'll play more than 20 minutes in. But if he, like his per 36 type stats, like he would be leading America in guard rebounds. He just doesn't get to play as many minutes. We have, again, literal pro guards on the team. And I wonder if he got into play, if his impact and hustle would have done either some sort of like, off the floor, not X's and O's kind of thing to Houston, help the guards play a bit better, or if just his presence of rebounding and diving on the floor and those kinds of things would have made Houston play better as well. The other notable thing was Marcus Sasser played 38 minutes because he missed the last 2 with about a minute to go. So I don't think he fell on it funny, but he did shoot a fadeaway jump shot on the far sideline from where we're sitting at the media group. Shot a jump shot, fell out of bounds. I don't think he fell on the shoulder, but then in the course of play, there's a timeout, like almost immediately thereafter. And he started to walk on the floor after the timeout and looked at Sampson. They both kind of shook their heads and pointed and they took him out. In the post game, Kelvin Sampson said that it sounded like he said suplexed. I don't know what that means. I'm not a doctor. I teach history, but I will say that it sounded like the shoulder popped in and out really quickly. And he might have finished the game, except that Houston has a backup option in Terrence Arsenault that is big, long, fast, athletic. And again, while I could critique his shooting in the game or whatever, and wanted to be a little more aggressive, and okay, that's my 2 cents. I thought I should have been more aggressive. Defensively, he was great. So when you have those kinds of options, if you're Houston, it kind of did that for you. Like if Houston didn't have those options, I wonder if Sasser just forced himself to play. And I also don't know, because he sat out the last like 90 seconds. I don't know if that means that the shoulder had been bugging him throughout the day, and like that's why he shot 4 from 3. Because again, I thought 2 of those looked like open, including one like no one within 10 feet of him. He should have made that shot, right? Or if it was like on that play right before, because again, it was far away, a tough shot, fell down a little bit, or whatever, right? All in all, Sampson wasn't worried about it, so I'm not worried about it. But that's the 2 cents. Otherwise, the guards need to score the ball better, particularly need to shoot the ball better. They just had open shots they didn't make. Jamal Shead, I guess, had a couple nice like drop offs, including the one I mentioned, Jarace Walker's dunk on the top half. The pass of that was beautiful. And Marcus Sasser, to his credit, had a nice little give go. Like it was a 4-pass sequence with him and Roberts back and forth that just spun everyone on St. Mary's defense around and led to a Marcus Sasser and one layup that at the time felt like the ice of the game. It actually wasn't. Reggie Chaney's big block down the stretch was the ice of the game. But I thought it was interesting that once Houston realized they could run that horn set to open up the high-low action, because St. Mary's would not double, it actually kind of took the guards out of the game. Now, Houston was scoring in it, and so I don't think it mattered, because Houston doesn't care who in a white jersey this Saturday, I guess, who scores. And that's one like the cultural things that Sampson's done a really good job of. But I do think it was interesting that like it seemed like feeding the post kind of took the guards at least out of rhythm. And I also think, I got to give credit where credit's due. They practiced too. Bluntly, there was Houston's guards score in that kind of a game, when you see that kind of a defensive game where the big men are scoring slow points. You see a lot more of Houston's guards score in transition. And St. Mary's was really, really good at only rebounding with 3 guys and getting 2 guys back to cut transition out. And part of that's because of their size and length. And part of that's because they're good at basketball. That's a good basketball team that will be in the tournament, will probably come in second or third in that conference, WCC. And again, that conference sent 3 or 4 teams to the tournament last year, right? That's a good basketball conference. But on the whole, I was a little disappointed in the shooting. Again, I mentioned the 2 shots that Sasser should have made. And then I think Arsenault's got more in his bag than that. That was not a bigger moment than him. He should have attacked the basket a little bit more. On the whole, though, Houston shot 36.8%. St. Mary's shot 37%. Houston had 27 rebounds. St. Mary's had 36 rebounds. And if you look at those numbers on the surface, Houston should lose that game, right? Like Houston shoots the ball worse. Houston has the ball less. Houston should lose that game. The big difference were that St. Mary's had 17 turnovers and Houston had just 5. St. Mary's had just 1 block with all that size and length they've got, and Houston had 6, again, including the ice at the end of the game with Reggie Chaney, right? So I think what that indicates is the defensive intensity was actually even higher out of Houston, for all the credit I'm giving St. Mary's, than theirs was, right? I also think it's worth pointing out that of those 17 turnovers, a lot of them, I don't have the exact number. I was looking at all the way up to the pod started going a second ago. They had at least a half dozen, and if not more, either shot clock turnovers, like direct turnovers, or blocks at the end of the shot clock that, sure, the ball went out of bounds, but now St. Mary's has a second or a second and a half to inbound the ball and get a shot off, and that leads to bad attempts, right? And playing defense for the entirety of that 35-second shot clock is impressive in and of itself, but that Houston was able to do that also pulled the scoring down some, because there's 40 minutes. If every possession's 30 seconds, each team gets 40 possessions, right? like that's not a lot of shots. And so I was impressed by that by a lot, because frankly, I'd understand if Houston got frustrated offensively and thus like let something slide on defense, try and leak or whatever. And they didn't, right? To Sampson's culture and credit, they didn't. Again, man, only having 5 turnovers against that St. Mary's, and including 1 charge I thought was bogus. But anyway, having 5 turnovers against the St. Mary's defense is really, really impressive. And frankly, is a sign of being very, very safe with the basketball. Speaking of safe, let's talk a little bit about Simply Safe. Simply Safe is presenting sponsor of this show. So Simply Safe is interesting, and I always want to talk about it because at the holiday time, that's when like burglaries, break-ins, and people taking stuff from your porch just skyrocket, especially when people are online shopping, right? And my little story about Simply Safe has been that I wish I had it at this one time, and I've had it a lot for most of the time since, right? And so at one time, you guys know, you can see sneakerhead. I had a handful of like 3 pair and a pair to play in the back of my car. Just they'd been accumulating in the back of my car or whatever, right? In the trunk of my car, I should say. And I woke up one morning, went outside, and my car had been broken into. And the cops showed up. I called the cops. I come over, ran the report. I don't want to tell you how much money with the shoes in the back because it was nice pairs, right? Nice pairs of sneakers. And they said, "Well, do you have any video cameras?" No. Do you have any security system? At the time, the answer was no. And Simply Safe has all those things. And had I had Simply Safe home monitoring system, security, those kinds of things, they could have just pinpointed exactly who came by, what car they drove, what they looked like, what time they took stuff. All those kinds of things could have been found out. Because in an emergency, Simply Safe has 24/7 professional monitoring agents using Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real so you can get higher priority police response. Simply Safe is a whole home security with advanced sensors in every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and out. I'm telling you that out is important. That's personal experience. Smarter ways to detect motion that alert when a threat is real. They even have hazard sensors to detect fires, floods, other threats to your home. The 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day. That's less than half the price of traditional home security systems. With the top-ranked Simply Safe apps, you can stay complete control of your system, arm, disarm, unlock for guests, all those kinds of things from any time or at any time from anywhere. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off the new system at simplysafe.com/locked-on-college today. That's simplysafe.com/locked-on-college. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right. So in this last bit, I don't want to just completely bypass the St. Mary's win. However, you guys, we talked on Friday. I thought that was going to be a bigger win than it was. And my immediate thought on the drive home afterwards, aside from the fact like, holy crap, it's dark outside. Oh man, that's a Whataburger. I'm going to grab something to eat. Outside of that, my like next thought was like, oh crap, what's this going to do to the ratings? Because you and I talked last week, I worried that Houston could drop in the overall ratings, standings, I should say, across the country without losing a game because some of the teams they're scheduled to play are losing games, right? Like, we just played St. Mary's, and I maintain that will be a tournament team. However, that was the third loss of the season already, right? Houston played Oregon, and that was going to be a big-time game, but Oregon had already lost before that, right? Like, these games that Houston was hoping are their marquee wins in the non-conference play are still good wins, just not as strong as we hoped. And we're really putting a lot on Alabama this Saturday and Virginia the Saturday after as being big, big games. So when you look, so I got home, hyped up on caffeine, couldn't sleep. So I looked up some games across the country this week. And the biggest one is Texas Austin. UT Austin had a big, big win over Creighton. And Creighton was top 10 in the country as well at the time, depending on the poll. But they were top 10 everything. One had them as high as 7. And I worried that could be because Texas beat them at home. And that's a very good Creighton team. And Houston kind of, won a close one against St. Mary's. I worry that could leapfrog Texas in some voters' mind. Now, I will say working in Houston's favor is that was Texas's only game last week, right? Houston technically played 2. The other thing is that Creighton played 2 games last week. They lost to Texas and then lost to Nebraska, unranked Nebraska. And so I wonder if the truth is that in a month we're looking like maybe Creighton was closer to the St. Mary's world than we realized. But I don't know if we'll get there for a little while. And I worry that when people vote on Monday in the AP poll, that we're going to have kind of moment, right? Like people are going to think about that as a big, big win. If I look at the other, teams behind us, again, being number 1, I guess everyone's behind us. I didn't look at everyone. Virginia beat Florida State. That's a Power 5 team, not a ranked one. Number 6, Baylor lost to Marquette. but then beat Gonzaga. So I don't know how that'll shake out in voters' minds. Number 4, Arizona lost to an unranked Utah team. They're probably out for a little while. Number 10, Indiana beat number 18, North Carolina. But North Carolina has lost several games already this season and is going to probably be out of the top 25 when it comes out on Monday. I say all that to say that Houston really could theoretically drop here, right? And they could realistically drop here because there are just enough voters that see the burnt orange and the big school and the Texans, and Chris Beard, and those kind of things, and give them number 1 ranking because of the Creighton game. We're looking to kind of make up some ground. And honestly, I know Sampson said it doesn't matter to him. It matters to me. I like seeing number 1 ranked next to our name. I like seeing number 1 Houston on the board because, frankly, like, we've got the Astros. And outside of that, like, we don't got Houston number 1 a whole lot of other places, right? Maybe number 1 pick. We're hoping number 1 pick in basketball, and we probably have the number 1 pick locked up in football. But it's not really the same thing, right? And so I enjoy that. I know Sampson says it's for the fans. Okay, fanboy right here. I like it. I want it. Okay. So, call me crazy in the comments. Call me crazy. I want it. Now, I want it. I'm not so crazy that I'm like obsessed, like I want it now and I don't care about later. No, understanding that the bigger thing will be seedings going into the tournament in March. The bigger thing will be who's number 1 come mid-April and the whole thing's over. Obviously, that's far, far more important. But I can't win those games in March right now. I can win these games right now, and that's why I want to focus on this game right now. I will say that I watched Texas Creighton on Thursday. I watched Baylor Gonzaga. I did not watch them lose to Marquette. I firmly feel like Houston's as good when they're playing their best, is as good as anyone in the country. Obviously, Sasser and Walker didn't have a big game on Saturday, but I think what makes this team so good is that it didn't matter. Just meant J1 Roberts showed up, right? Just meant that Reggie Chaney showed up. Just meant that someone else showed up. And that's why I think they're the number 1 team in the country anyways, right? I know Texas will probably say they've got whatever guys as well. And I'm sure Virginia's coming for our throats. And frankly, media voters listening to this, it would behoove you to put Houston and Virginia as 1-2 because they play each other in about 2 weeks and you can like have this big, fight, like lead up to that ESPN game. But what I do think is interesting is that Houston wins an ugly game where the best players don't shoot the ball well. And it doesn't seem to matter. They beat tournament teams multiple times this season while not shooting the ball particularly well. And I think that has to count, right? I understand that Creighton was top 10 in some people's polls, but if Creighton continues to lose, are they going to be top 10 all year long? Like, I don't know about all that. If you think you do know about all that, and you want to talk to me about it, you can find me at Painsworth512, Painswrth 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your social media handles. We'll talk Coogs all day long. Later this week, we're going to talk some about bowl games came out. It looks like we're going to Baton Rouge. We're going to Louisiana to play the Raging Cajuns, but not at home, but kind of at home. And we'll talk about more of that this week. We'll talk some about the basketball games this week, both Alabama next weekend and North Florida on Tuesday. We'll also have some guests coming on this week. We have a schedule working right now, working the guys at Locked On Bama to get at least one of them on. We're also going to talk to Ryan Monceau, who's going to tell us something about the Houston NIL deals. A whole bunch of fun stuff coming this week, so make sure you tune into Locked On Cougs. Find me at Painsworth512. I'll be sending all that stuff out all week long when it happens and as it happens, so make sure you're dialed in there. You can also hit subscribe down below. Make sure you get all our podcasts each day, every day, to make sure you tune in the Cougs all the time. Make it your first listen of the day. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, I'm going to recommend Locked On College Basketball. Andy's doing a great job over there. But more importantly, Isaac is doing a great job of dealing with his North Carolina Tar Heels continuing to lose. Make sure to check out Locked On College Basketball for your second listen today. Go check out what they got to say about the big, big weekend in college hoops. And remember, Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team, in this case, the number 1 team, every day. Go Cougs.